Finding Home by Sapphire. Chapter 10. To Separate. Agent Romanov, what exactly do you think I could do? I'm no doctor. Harry had finally freed his arm, but was walking at Natasha's hurried speed anyway as the woman swept down another corridor. It's not a doctor Clint needs right now, Natasha said grimly. It's a miracle. The doctors can't do squat. They say he's perfectly fine physically, except that all his vitals are dropping. There's no reason for it at all. So, if doctors can't find the problem, what do you expect me to do? Harry protested as they rounded the corner. I'm not being modest when I say I can't really heal. I'm literally a crap at... Get away from him! His voice echoed around the sickbay, and everyone within hearing distance turned to stare at him, including the figure looming over a comatose Clint Barton. What is it? Natasha looked back and forth between Harry and the space where Harry was engaging in a glaring match. Her hand drifted to her gun. What's wrong? Nothing, Harry said curtly. Clear the room. I reckon I might be able to help him after all. Without waiting for an affirmative, Harry strode forward, sweeping across the sick bay to Clint's side. Behind him, he heard Natasha ordering the doctors out of the room, but got a glimpse of her as she remained in the background, watching him with wary, anxious eyes. Ignoring her presence, Harry stepped up beside the bed, raising his eyes and wordlessly putting up a silencing charm around them at the same time before he greeted. Hello, Death. Agent Romanov? Natasha started, surprised by both the arrival and the fact that she hadn't heard him come in. Dr. Banner, can I help you with something? No. Bruce shook his head distractedly as his eyes darted to where Harry was standing. I heard Harry yell, so I came to see if anything was wrong. Did something happen? I don't know. Natasha turned her attention back to her partner and the Brit, keeping half an eye on the scientist next to her. Clint, Barton was dying and the doctors couldn't do anything, so I went and got Potter. He said he only knew a few healing spells and that there wasn't a lot he could do, but as soon as he came in here, he shouted for something to get away from... I'm guessing Barton? She trailed off, even more confused now that she had gone over the events in her head. Bruce took a step forward, ears straining to pick up any sound as Harry's mouth moved. What was going on? You can't take him, Harry insisted. His soul is already half gone, Death intoned, one hand hovering over Clint's chest with a swirling forced green ball of pure energy under it, already partly removed from the archer's body. Thus his hold on life shall be withdrawn. If it's half gone, then that means it's also half not gone, Harry said impatiently. You can't just take him because Loki screwed him over. That's not fair. Death frowned. When life is too much to bear, death is always fair. Not this time, Harry said firmly. You're the one taking his soul. Your job is to take the souls that have already been freed from their bodies. His hasn't. It's just been tampered with. But Loki has no hold on him anymore, which means everything goes to you. So put it back. All of it. Death was silent for a long moment before his eyes moved to Natasha standing by the door. Harry followed its gaze and blinked when he found Bruce standing there as well. The Master of Death should not be influenced by emotion, Death said softly, and its gaze was suddenly piercing and harsh as it looked at Harry again. It will be your downfall, young master. I'm not! Harry retorted back defensively. And this time, Death grinned, the action razor sharp and ugly. Death is honest. Death is fair. Thou art neither, O master of mine, so why pray tell must I obey? Harry's jaw tightened. I am your master, he said quietly, staring straight back at Death with all the defiance he could muster. You accepted me as your master the day I gathered the Three Hallows, and you bound yourself to my service the day you refused to let me die. You don't need any other reason to obey me. Now put his soul back. Now! Death stared down at him, expression twisting, and Harry knew it was angry this time. This human is not worth your time, Death hissed. A god you are compared to this mortal, and yet you lower yourself to his level. I said put it back! Harry finally snapped. I never wanted to be a god. I never wanted any of this, but you wouldn't let me go. Yeah, maybe I am influenced by my emotions, but so what? I'm human. I didn't ask to be your master, so goddammit, put his soul back! Don't make me repeat myself again! An invisible wave of power erupted from Harry, and Death seemed to stumble back, releasing his hold on the soul. Harry watched in relief as the ball of energy sank back into Clint, and the man himself released a deep breath before settling into a calm slumber. A rasping laugh made him look up again, eyeing death with caution as it started to disappear. "Oh, master, my master, what will you do when your dear ones depart and your fate rings true? Will you rise? Will you fall? Will you try and stand tall? Will you weep? Will you cry? Will you turn a blind eye? Human you are, and yet you are not. So I offer you this, a few words for thought." And soon enough, it disappeared, but its voice echoed around Harry, loud and mocking, and only for him to hear. "Who telleth a tale of unspeaking death? Who lifteth the veil of what is to come? Who painteth the shadows that are beneath the wide winding caves of the peopled tomb? Or uniteth the hopes of what shall be with the fears and the love for that which we see?" "They do not know me, master," were Death's parting words, whispered in his ear. "But you do. They live in life, you live in death. They do not know your burden. Is it not better than to cut your ties with the land of men?" And then it faded altogether, and Harry just wanted to run, and never look back, because it would be the easy thing to do, but he couldn't because he had been stupid enough to let people get close, and he had other responsibilities now. So he took a deep breath and pulled together the unraveling seams of his control before dropping the wards around him. "He's all right now," Harry called, surprised at how shaky his voice was. He cleared his throat and avoided Bruce's searching gaze as Natasha moved forward. "He's just resting. He'll be fine when he wakes up." Natasha rushed over to the monitor, scanning Clint's vital signs, checking them anxiously before releasing a sigh of relief. She turned back to Harry, genuine gratitude in her eyes. Thank you so much for whatever you did. He's my partner. I can't lose him. Thank you." Harry managed a strained smile, nodding once before vacating the sick bay with Bruce. He barely noticed the scientist's worried expression as he hurried towards the nearest door, needing the open space of the sky. He fumbled twice as he tried to enter the code that would open said door, missing the right numbers by a mile before Bruce reached over and entered it for him. The door slid open, and Harry didn't even pause to thank him before bolting out of the base, gulping down fresh air as he leaned wearily against the railing. It was several long minutes later before Harry raised his head again and found Bruce still beside him, patiently quiet in a way one wouldn't expect someone who could change into the Hulk to be. "Sorry," Harry offered weakly. "I'm usually better at keeping my emotions under control." Bruce shrugged and smiled back wryly. "Don't worry, I know all about it. Strange thing is, I'm still calm, even though you're an absolute wreck. Yeah," Harry sighed. "The effects of a phoenix doesn't go away just because I fall apart. Don't worry." "You're all right now, though." Bruce was observing him carefully, and Harry straightened completely, ignoring the last traces of fear still lingering in his mind. "Yeah, I'm fine," he assured. "I was just a bit shaken up with Agent Barton back there." Bruce didn't look like he believed him, and his next words confirmed it. "I know a panic attack when I see one. I may not have a degree in medical science, but I am rather good at it." Harry looked away, frowning at the open sky around them. "What do you do," he asked softly, "when even death isn't an option?" "You move on." There was no hesitation in Bruce's reply. "You find something else to keep you occupied, and you keep living. I should know. I've been there, remember?" Harry glanced sidelong at the scientist and felt himself relax. This was one of the things he liked most about Bruce. He never pushed and gave honest advice when someone asked for it. A complete opposite to Tony, but Harry thought it was a good balance. "Well, let's go find Tony." Harry pushed away from the railing, leaving any depressing thoughts behind for the day. "Mr. Stark?" Bruce looked puzzled as he followed Harry back inside. "Yeah, we're leaving, aren't we? Are you finished packing?" Well, yes, but..." "Good. Knowing Tony, he's not. We can go help." "Wait, Harry..." Bruce stopped him with a hesitant hand on his shoulder, removing it quickly as if still not used to any sort of human touch. "What do you mean, we?" Harry paused long enough to arch an eyebrow at the scientist. "You haven't forgotten, have you? Stock tower? Moving in? Big lab for you to play with? Ring any bells? Smothering a grin at the stunned look Bruce had taken on, Harry moved away again, heading toward Tony's temporary room. Wait! Bruce's footsteps picked up speed behind the mechanic. I don't think... Harry! Doc! Tony exclaimed as he appeared in the hallway, stepping out of his room with a suitcase in hand. Ready to go? Yep, Harry said cheerfully as they both turned and ushered Bruce back down the way they had come. He and Tony had come to a silent agreement a while ago that the only way they could convince Bruce to come with them was to not allow the man an opportunity to protest. Bruce is all packed. We can stop by his room, pick up his things, and head out. Wait! Bruce finally dug in his heels, and while Harry and Tony were both powerful in their own right, neither of them had the extra physical strength Bruce did. All three finally came to a mostly reluctant stop outside the scientist's room. Bruce turned and crossed his arms. I never agreed to this! Harry and Tony exchanged a glance before Tony shrugged. Well, technically, you never said no. You said it wasn't a good idea, and that we wouldn't want you there, and some other stuff I stopped listening to ages ago, but you never said no! Bruce pinned him with a mildly ticked-off look. I seem to recall you answering me whenever I gave my reasons. Excuses, not reasons, Tony corrected. And haven't you ever picked up the art of nodding and guessing in all the right places? I've had to do that all the time when people come and tell me how great their companies are. No! Tony thought about this for a moment and then shrugged. Well, that's just adorable, big guy. Now let's go. Mr. Stark! Bruce began objecting again as Tony attempted to push him into his room. Harry solved the problem by entering for him and coming back out with his luggage a few seconds later. I think this is supposed to be my choice. How about this then? Harry finally cut in, leaning against the doorframe. You can move into Stark Tower, or you can move in with me. I have enough space for even the Hulk to move around, and Tony's place isn't that far away. You can go use the lab anytime you want, but you won't be smack in the middle of the city, either. Harry, your place isn't that big, Tony reminded. And no offense, Doc, but I earned that guest bedroom in Harry's house. I'm not giving it up. Harry shot him an amused look, wiggling the fingers of one hand. Magic, Tony? Tony blinked, wide-eyed, and then the usual excitement lit up his eyes. So you can expand the place? Just like that? Harry actually laughed at that. I don't need to expand it. I've got 6 floors above the ground floor hidden with magic. No muggles can see them. I haven't used them since I built them. They were more a safety measure than anything else, equipped with the latest defenses to serve as a safe house. But I can open them again any time. And you never showed me? Tony looked highly offended. 9 months! What does a guy have to do around here to earn a little trust? I showed you the basement, Harry reminded him, and that I've never shown anyone before. Tony sniffed dramatically. You're apparently going to show Doc here, and you've only known him for a few days. Harry rolled his eyes at the outrageous pout on the billionaire's face. Oh, get over it. I'll show you both as soon as we get there. Tony still looked disgruntled, but he brightened at the prospect of seeing more magic and turned back to Bruce. Well, how about it, Banner? You're a lot calmer with Harry around, so there won't even be any of those accidents you're so afraid of. Bruce stared from one hopeful face to the other. Tony's expression was more impatient than Harry's, and he wondered absently how the mechanic managed to put up with Tony's antics on a day-to-day basis. Fine, he finally capitulated, feeling a glow of pleasure when both Tony and Harry immediately grinned. But how are we going to get there? We're still in the air, and none of us can pilot a jet. Tony frowned, obviously not having thought of that particular aspect as he glanced down at his Iron Man suitcase. We'll go by side-along operation, Harry announced, pushing up the doorframe. Side-along what? They both turned to look at Harry. Apparition, Harry clarified. It's basically jumping from one place to another. Instant transportation. Might be a bit uncomfortable, but perfectly safe. Harry paused, and then amended, mostly, but I'm pretty good at it. Wait, if you could do that, why didn't you just jump directly to Germany? Tony asked. Harry shook his head. 1, I didn't know where you were going. And 2, I have to know what the place looks like before I can operate there. So now that you've been to Stuttgart, you'll be able to jump back there anytime? Bruce asked this time. Harry tilted his head. Depends on the distance. I probably can, but I've never tried operating so far before. I'd rather not do it unless it was an emergency. Understandable. Tony nodded, slinging an arm around Harry's shoulder as all three of them started down the corridor again. Wouldn't want to jump halfway there and end up in the Atlantic. Puts a bit of a damper on things. Harry snorted at the bad pun, but he had to hide an affectionate smile. He had missed the easy camaraderie he had had with Tony before this entire fiasco happened, and even though he knew this wouldn't last, because both Tony and Bruce would never let the Earth fall at Loki's feet, no matter how much they were currently thinking of quitting the Avengers, not to mention his own eventual departure, he was glad that they would have a little downtime right now. They've left! All three of them! Steve felt a little bewildered when he realized how empty the base suddenly seemed. Never mind that the majority of the place's personnel were still around. Fury nodded, expression unreadable. Left a few minutes ago. I think Porter transported them away. Oh. Steve looked around the room. What about Thor? Still here. Fury waved a hand in the general direction of the guest bedrooms. In his room. Oh. Steve said again, his shoulders slumping. He had been thinking about Harry's words, coming to the conclusion that perhaps he had been too hasty, too close-minded. He had automatically tried to take up the position of leader, having done it during the Second World War, but he hadn't taken the time to get to know the people he was working with. And that was the biggest difference. In the war, he had been leading soldiers, people who had enlisted and were expected to follow their commanding officer's orders. But here, he was working with other people, each with their own strengths to bring to the team, and each with the habit of working alone. How could he expect them to follow him if he didn't even make the effort to listen to them when they spoke? Especially Stark. The billionaire had rubbed him the wrong way from the minute he had first met him because Steve had immediately thought Stark had been trying to insult him. But didn't that man joke around with everyone? If Steve had been Bruce, he would have gotten angry the moment Stark cracked the first Hulk joke. But the doctor had simply let it roll off him, and thinking back, he had to admit that Bruce had seemed a little more relaxed around Stark than he did around him or the others. And Harry was right. Stark didn't need to be here. None of them did, and yet they had all come, perhaps hoping for a way to stop Loki for good. But they had all royally screwed that up, and now the Avengers had scattered. Steve had thought hard about Harry's parting question, and thought he might have the answer. Or answers. Each person on the team would have a different one. Bruce was perhaps the easiest to figure out. The scientist, being so afraid to hurt other people, wouldn't want to be stuck in such a closed environment surrounded by agents ready to shoot him at a moment's notice. He wasn't used to being accepted in any group, which would probably explain why Bruce was so much more at ease around Harry and Tony. Neither seemed at all concerned about Bruce's temperamental state. Steve was wary as well, but he wasn't anywhere near as bad as Natasha or Fury, who seemed to go for their guns every time the scientist so much as twitched. For Thor, well, Steve supposed anyone would be tense if they had to fight their own brother, blood-related or not. Being part of a team that didn't seem to be getting anywhere with all the arguments would be frustrating for him at best. Steve remembered that one of Thor's friends, Selvig, was still under Loki's control, and that couldn't be doing anything to improve Thor's temper. With the Avengers looking to be somewhat useless against Loki, the demigod wouldn't want to stick around either. He hadn't met Hawkeye yet, but he did know of the Black Widow's reputation as a spy. Being a lone wolf, or part of a tag team with Clint at most, it wouldn't be easy for Natasha to simply fall in with a much larger group of individuals, all with quirks of their own. And without the familiarity of her longtime partner, who would probably act as a foil for the female agent's cold demeanor, she wouldn't have had much to stay for either. And Stark. Steve was starting to realize that the billionaire was more of a package deal than anything else. No Harry, no Stark. So used to the man's devil-may-care attitude, he had been more than a little shocked at the sheer amount of protectiveness whenever Harry was brought up. And it wasn't just Stark either. It seemed Harry was just as adamant about defending Stark as the billionaire was about defending Harry. Neither gave an inch when it came to shielding the other from any type of harm, and it looked like neither would return to the Avengers without the other's approval. Rogers? Steve glanced up. Fury was still staring at him. What will you do? The director asked. Steve stared at him before straightening. He had made up his mind already. I'm going after Harry, he announced. He seems close to Thor and Banner, and Stark won't come within a mile of the Avengers without him. Maybe he'll be able to convince Romanov and Barton as well. I think what this team needs most of all is someone to hold it together, and that's not me. I can lead them into battle if they trust me enough and coordinate them, but I can't keep us together. I need Harry. Fury didn't seem surprised, but then again, Steve had never seen the director surprised before. Either way, Fury only nodded once. Do what you think is best. At this point, any plan is a good plan. Steve nodded sharply, but before he could take even a step towards the door, Hill burst into the room, looking almost frantic. Sir, we just picked up a burst of energy coming from Manhattan, she reported urgently. The coordinates pinpoint Stark Tower as Loki's new base of operations. He's done it, sir. He's opened a portal directly above it. The Chitauri are pouring through now. Fury swore, already heading for the bridge. Rogers, you need to get out there now. Hill, head down to sickbay and get Romanov and Barton. Tell Coulson to get Thor. I don't care what you have to do. If Hawkeye's not awake yet, dump a bucket of water on him if you have to. Just get all of them moving. Steve had already sprinted out of the room, heading for the nearest jet and yelling for Hill to tell the other three to meet him on the deck. As he ran to the hangar, he prayed that their other teammates hadn't jumped directly to Stark Tower. They needed to regroup before they could push the invading forces back.